Welcome. Output Field presents Skin Garden, a collection of three-dimensional musings in flesh presented in 3 rooms. This exhibition is about bodies.
Here are no strings. No strings on me.
Changing bodies.
Drop quickly down the spine. Going up.
The bodies move.
Pushed with music.
Bodies from a distance.
Posture, face, tone, voice between your teeth.
Any body.
Sounds of fear.
Our bodies.
Don't look at me. My voice is bigger than my head.
We're bodies.
Impulse of thought.
Output Field is a placeless coalition providing community for experimental artists, curators, and venues. Our mission is to breach the canon by linking across disciplines and time zones. All canons are finite. Our canon is mercurial. Our canon is plastic. Our canon stretches and fuses mediums. We are nurturing an organically curated database of underrepresented voices in the arts. A curatorial corrective. Output Field is calling for the redistribution of cloud. Shifts are imminent.
Thank you for attending Day 2 of Skin Garden's opening, our debut showcase. We're so happy you're here. We will be streaming a panel discussion between the artists behind Bodies Unhinge, an audiovisual articulation of queer affect, which opened today in New Art City. Curators of the room, Viv Q and Venus in Foil will be answering your questions at the end. Visit outputfield.com/skintgarden to walk around inside this room. You should also check out the 2 other rooms. They're also audiovisual explorations of bodies. This is a broadcast of a conversation between the artists behind Bodies Unhinge. We discuss the intention behind the room, and process of articulating queer affect. Questions will be answered at the end by Venus and Viv. Founded by Juicy Amoroso and Sam Aldridge, IOR50 is a studio based in the multiverse in which we exist. Focusing on art direction, animation and visual effects, they develop creative technology solutions using biased rendering, real-time engines, and experimental approaches. For their collaboration with CTM, Club Q have teamed up with IOR50 Studio and its founders Sam Aldridge and Juicy to present a queer motion capture archive within the virtual club's space. Betty Apple's art and music focuses on using body politics and performativity as her framework, and drawing on her lived experience as a millennial living in post-colonial Taiwan. Her aim is to study the chaotic and hysterical noise text that is created from input to output, distorted by dynamics introduced by humans as well as objects. The main idea is to symbolize what is repressed by the seemingly perfect or accurate sound of science and patriarchy. Curator of Skin Garden, Viv Q is a generalist based in the Bay Area, co-parented by Chinese immigrants and the Internet. She works at micro and macro scales, oscillating between object and theory, aesthetic and systemic. She is a zealot for the experimental, the speculative, and the absurd. With ties to industrial design, research, curation, Creative direction, she's made a home in concept as her core medium. Co-curator of the show, Venus is a PhD candidate at Brock University. Her research deals with the effect of remains of childhood trauma and aesthetic modes of survival, and involves elements of queer theory, affect theory, sound studies and psychoanalysis. She is a member of the Posthumanism Research Group and a co-founder of SOAK, a collective and club night aimed at supporting people of marginalized genders in experimental electronic music. Bodies Unhinge is a collaboration between all of us. We would love it if you spent some time inside. Curated by Viv Q, and Venus and Foil. This room articulates the experience of becoming unhinged. Exploring the ways unruly aesthetic experiences disrupt the borders of flesh and shake loose the psychic debris left by trauma. Here, the queer dynamics of raving offer the club as a site to sound out the effective afterlife of psychic injury. This space summons queer effects through the voices, breath, and movements of queer people, the collective residues of trauma. Taipei-based sound artist Betty Apple weaves together samples of queer breath and voice to deconstruct and reconstruct Venus and Foil's anthropological research of the rave space. Betty's soundscape is brought to life through IOR50's choreographed sculpture, whose movements represent an assemblage of queer bodies, sourced from motion capture data in their queer movement database. Bodies Unhinge is a digital manifestation of queerness exceeding capture. Here, sound waves and pixels articulate the unruly atmosphere of the rave, theorized by Venus and Foil, sounded out by Betty Apple, and danced by IOR50. Before we stream the panel discussion, we will play Betty Apple's 13-minute soundscape for the room. It is a deconstructed reading of Venus and Foil's essay. We collected voice samples of a breathing, readings of dear members of our queer community. Thank you to all the queers in our communities who send us voice samples of your voice and breath, Mia, Dorothy, Zach, Anchi Siwaz, Julia, Kelso, Ejito. Thank you, Peter Kern, for your help mastering audio. If you hear or see something that resonates with you, please consider donating. Outputfield.com/donate. Again, that's outputfield.com/donate.
also on the secure distinction between the individual and the environment. And there is no secure distinction between me and you. And there is no secure distinction between me and you. Affect can be transmitted through the air. And from person to person. From person to person. Effective entrainment, the process whereby then we get into each other.
The music with you. Techno.
Vibration of music.
The music with you. Techno.
One person's or one group's nervous and hormonal systems are brought into alignment. The vital means through which we feel the atmosphere is
Yes, no.
In other words, we breathe in the atmosphere. We smell the effective qualities of the space.
The vibration of music. Breathe in the atmosphere. We smell the effective qualities of the space. Dance.
We remove socially disparaged desires and effective reservoirs of hope.
Imagination, pacified.
Beyond the normative project of growing up. Queer names excess.
Tightly.
Unruly aesthetic of assemblage, techno,
Bass,
poppers, kiss,
heavy stomping,
strangers,
sleep deprivation,
strangers, sweat,
Stomping, throbbing, erasing, sounding outreach.
Temple with the face of my mom.
FaceTime like this, where one can linger in the beat, in the rupture, in the cluck. What we are is the possibility of glimpsing
that impossible love,
For hours, days, seemingly months, years.
that impossible love, for hours, days, seemingly months, years,
went through hell to get here. Skin drip from my skinny bones. This doorway, shimmering silver, splits into two, and so do I. Toilet while we were fucking. One fuck in the toilet.
awesome.
to reality. Back to life. Back to reality. Back to life. Back to reality. It feels so
good.
we land in the empty space, the space between. The ruins of blue, flash, green, white, my whole being.
To get here.
We conjure particles that have
Something. Energy.
heavy falls the buffalo, platform sneaker, 1 foot here, heavy, the next there, heavy still, we're building, somewhere south.
We summon.
Sissy boy and cyborg.
The witch. The bitch.
Sissy boy and cyborg.
Spiral system.
Sissy boy and cyborg.
The witch. The bitch.
Sissy boy and cyborg.
To get here. To get here.
To get here. Alice fell into the rabbit hole again. It's a long way
disappearing between river waves and shake out sticky memories of breathing. With this comes an acoustic sensibility and physical fluidity. I'm all around me. I'm all around me. I'm all around me.
我左右摆动的肉体延伸着，我的心在什么？蓝色的光吸住我。人在光中选择这个里的周围环境，快乐的扩张着生命。伸出来的支持着身，敏感着心，在呼吸着感觉。我的鼻，坚持随之而来的，是随着生敏感的心，在学习，在学习呼吸的感觉。和鱼类流动的感觉，我到处都是。
If you saw anything that resonated with you, please donate to our cause. Help us reach the canon. Nourish experimental arts. Did anything resonate with your body? If anything touched you, please donate to our cause. Help us reach the canon. Nourish experimental arts.
We will now begin streaming the panel discussion, in which we discuss the process behind creating the room, Bodies Unhinge, which is a virtual gallery that opened today in New Art City. Visit outputfield.com/skinnedgarden to walk around inside this room. You should also check out the 2 other rooms. They're also audio-visual explorations of bodies.
Hi guys, welcome to Skin Garden. If you're just tuning in and are unfamiliar with our opening, this is the second day of a 3-day gallery opening called Skin Garden. It is a virtual exhibition about bodies, and today we welcome you with this panel. We're shedding some light into our approach behind the room, Bodies Unhinge, which opens today. And the artists behind this space are going to discuss the process behind articulating queer affect through voice and movement and breath. And we're also going to have a question and answer at the end with the curators. This is a pre-recorded session because of time zone frictions, but the Q&A will be live with me and Venus and Foil. So let's hear a little bit about that research. Welcome, Emily. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Good. Yeah, so, I mean, the text that was used to inform the soundscape and sort of the idea behind this room came from a research paper that I wrote recently, which is soon being submitted for publication. Essentially, the paper is kind of a theory or a poetics of grief, specifically the kind of grief that's found in melancholia, which is a psychoanalytic term that's different from mourning in the sense that mourning is when you grieve for a tangible object. An object is lost and mourned, and then eventually you move forward from that. Whereas melancholia is this sort of pathological form of grief, the kind of grief that occurs when the object that's lost is not tangible. So what's lost might be the future, or what's lost might be like the very possibility of love. And there's a rich body of research that suggests that melancholia, or this unfinishable process of grieving, is experienced by queer people who are excluded from the social order, whose love is often foreclosed upon. And even in the modern times when LGBTQ rights, there have been great strides, there's still this feeling of not belonging, or this feeling and still very real tangible acts of violence as well. And melancholia is theorized to be sort of a state that's experienced by many different people who are excluded by the social order, not necessarily unique to queer people specifically, although that's more of the context in which I write. And so these messy feelings return to haunt us throughout our lives, and are very difficult to express. And that's where the term queer affects comes from. A theorist, Dina Georgis, it just talks about the sort of remnants of trauma, as well as those deep, dark, unsanctioned desires that have to be sort of suppressed and repressed in order to belong to society. They emerge as strange feelings that we often don't really have names for. And they're sort of a disruption when they do arrive. And that's what makes these affects queer. And again, this is sort of following a line of research that suggests the aesthetic is one means to sort of make contact with these queer affects or to express them. And this can happen when you look at a piece of art and you feel this sort of uncanny embrace, this like rush of strange feelings. And then my paper sort of suggests that the dance floor is also a space to not only commune with queer feelings or queer affects, but also envisage different futures. And that occurs in these moments where, you feel yourself sort of move beyond yourself.
I feel like that's beautiful because like melancholia is based on something so intangible that to have a somewhat tangible thing like aesthetic experience to be almost like a calling card or way of celebrating this intangibility is really nice.
And again, it's not to say that maybe the entire time that you spend on a dance floor, every piece of art you see will be what like calls forward those strange feelings, but it sort of offers the opportunity or the material conditions to experience that. And especially in the context of a queer party or a queer dance floor, I think that's where you find this imaginative potential as well. Because not only are you experiencing a kind of release of these unnameable feelings, but also the opportunity in being in a shared space with shared feelings, shared affect, as well as, the dancing bodies of all kinds of other marginalized people. You are sort of offered this little glimpse into another world. And that's sort of drawing on the theories of Jose Munoz and the idea of queer futurity. Or even if there is not necessarily a promise of emancipation, the beauty kind of lies in that imaginative moment. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's beautiful. How was the process in collecting that paper? Like, did you know that the queer dance floor sort of had this power before you approached the paper, or?
I did intuitively, but I didn't really have a language or have the name for some of these experiences. I wasn't aware of necessarily terms like queer futurity or queer affects. It was actually for one of my comprehensive exams, which involved reading a large body of literature and then writing a paper. I started reading these different pieces of queer theory, and I kept finding myself like on the dance floor in my mind. Every time I would read something, I would think like, where have I experienced this the most? And that had often been on the dance floor of queer parties. And that's what kind of inspired me to write the paper. And the paper is a little different from a traditional research theory paper, and that like it also includes sort of elements of creative writing, aspects of creative writing. It's more of an autoethnography. So I'm very like written into the paper, and my experiences are also written into the paper in ways that are kind of surreal, because I found it difficult to try to literally reflect those moments on the dance floor, because again, I think the point is they do kind of evade literal language.
Yeah.
In many circumstances. So writing from both a theoretical but also kind of like a surreal perspective was my attempt to articulate those in some way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because you wouldn't think that the process to like intellectualize or theorize something intangible is to like present another like soft form of communication, like writing, like creative writing. Um, how did people in academia take that approach?
Well, I mean, my supervisors quite enjoyed it seemed, and were encouraging me to try to be a little more experimental, or they were encouraging my desire to be a little experimental with my research. But I guess we'll see how the broader spheres of academia receive that, when I submit the paper to an academic journal. Maybe they'll think, oh my, that's really wild. But,
I have a friend actually, Mia, whose voice is featured in the soundscape. She's an awesome woman, and she does psychology research, and she also incorporates like more symbolism and artful speak in her papers. So I really appreciate that approach. Yeah. Do you want to speak a little bit more about soak and how those what experiences maybe from soak that came to you when you were reading these theories and stuff?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, soak is the collective and club night that I co-founded, and I mean, really, we did this because we noticed, especially in Toronto, there was a lack of maybe gender diversity, especially in more like experimental or techno lineups. And so myself and the other co-founder, Soft Matter, founded
who DJ'd yesterday.
Yeah, we founded it in an attempt to kind of address that gender disparity, and because we wanted to throw fun parties. So I think that through soak is where I find more of like that connection to the idea of like queer futurity or imagined futures, and that there have been moments, even though the parties are quite small and sometimes a bit renegade and thrown together, but there is such an air of comfortability and excitement and this feeling of kind of temporary freedom, which can be really beautiful. And I also just found it very inspiring because at some of our parties there was a lot of people I had never seen before, I didn't recognize, and it felt like maybe we were connecting to a group of people that didn't feel comfortable or represented at maybe some of the other parties or spaces that were being offered here in Toronto. And again, our scene's quite small, so you know what I mean, there's maybe less variety in some of the offerings that can be found, but
I mean, that communal aspect is like really beautiful, and I feel like when I started kind of like entering those environments, it had a huge effect on the way I conducted myself socially. Just people are so much more open, and even small things like being generous with compliments and even physical touch, like consent and just personal space, and people respecting that, but also like contributing a feeling of intimacy. I think all of that is linked with this common understanding of shared experience, shared lived experience that is only possible in these these queer environments.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And I think what's really interesting too is that on many queer dance floors and in many queer spaces, the rules of engagement are sort of drafted from the ground up, and it's really interesting because I think that's exactly where you get this like glimpse into like a queer future. Like if everyone were to act like this, even though it's kind of bound by that event or that experience or that night, it just sort of offers like a little bit of like a preview of what a queer future, a world that's weird, a world that's ruled by queer desires and like queer aims might be like.
I feel like that's also kind of a core mission statement of this room as well, just to present that future. through movement and that feeling of being unhinged, and this aesthetic calling card, which takes the form of movement, right? Segueing. That brings us to the movement of the space, animated in the form of this beautiful black and blue and red sculpture made by IOR50 Studio. Super interested in hearing the process behind that. But first, maybe let's talk about this queer motion capture library. What is motion capture, and why is it important? Why is that archive different from other archives?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sam from IOR50 Studio. So motion capture itself is simply the recorded data of movement taken from different joints on the body. You wear a suit, you connect it to your computer, and you record the movement of whoever seems to be wearing the suit. So it's always been a fascinating area of technology for me. As a dancer, as a child, I was drawn towards fusing my passions of movement and 3D data. And yeah, so this is just an area that I was always inspired by. And I find it quite important that these documentations took place, because from my personal experience as a 3D artist, there's a lack of a content available that isn't just this kind of video game cis white man kind of content, the way it's like the wizard casting the spell, the gunman shooting down the, like there's just only content really for the norm, for the
very binary in every sense of the word.
Exactly. And that is a dominant feature in the industry I work in. So yeah. It's always, I think I felt it was important that when I was recording this, that I made it open source for all queer artists to have access to, because there's no point in me just hoarding this like valuable data. The point was to allow a minority who may not have access to this technology, who may not have the means to fund it or the context to create it, to give them the opportunity to do what I do, and that is to express queer through my work.
I mean, not only are like the characters and the content very heteronormative, but like the people behind it and the people making it are very heteronormative, which is not a coincidence. So I think it's like when you say this industry, I think you mean CG, computer graphics, and sort of new media, right?
Exactly.
And then which is sort of adjacent to the gaming industry, which is where you kind of get this like bleed in of heteronormativity. And I think it's really beautiful that you made it open source, because the main gatekeeping factor to this data collection and distribution is these cis heteronormative people in the gaming industry that don't have their sights on any other content. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and so how did those movements play into your process for making the sculpture for Bodies Unhinge?
Well, I mean, studying before I actually fully went into recording the content, I tried to understand what queer movement was. Like, can you define queer through movement? And in essence, what I gathered was you can't define queer. I mean, there's no means in which it's all paradoxical, because it's a constant fluid expression of a minority. So we have to let go of what we understand to be a definite thing, and allow interpretation. And I was trying to record a wide range of people who I came across in my life, and reach out to have them reach out to their friends and come in to record data. And I spent multiple sessions in Berlin and in London, 2020, recording these queer individuals and friends of mine, and it was an amazing experience. So
Nice.
I think, yeah, I really wanted to capture the energy that was given when we were recording. We had I would always like prepare the environment, make sure they felt comfortable, and I spent a few months recording. So yeah, it was
Nice. Called what was the technology that you used to capture the motion?
it was a natural company who they endorsed. They provided us with the kit. They allowed it to rent us for free, and
Wow.
because they knew that it was for a good cause, and we wanted to have access to the best, and so they are the
Yeah.
best company for it. So they
So
provide the software and the suits, and they just sent it in the post, and we got
that green
recording.
suit with all the pom-poms, the whole thing.
I mean, times have changed, but along the same
Okay.
lines. It's not green anymore, you know.
Oh.
But yeah, it's the same kind of thing. It's just like a full body lycra suit with sensors inside of it. You connect it to the computer, and you do calibration settings, and then you just hit record, and you can get as much data as you want from it. So it's really fascinating, and the ways in which you can modify that data is interesting. You know, you can really play with slowing down, distorting, just breaking it to queer the movement even more in a way.
Right. That reminds me of yeah, just breaking what is broken even further and glitching it. To source from Legacy Russell, have people been using your queer library, and what are some exciting things coming out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. We get emails daily about getting access. Yeah, lots of emails.
Wow.
And yeah, we just send them the link. You know, you just need to email us, and we can send it to you. And there've been some really cool work created. So I'm looking forward to like how this develops. I mean, motion capture projects can often take a long time to create. So I can imagine in the future that gradually builds and builds, and as long as they contact us, I mean, I would love to see all of the work that's created through these things, because if I can give the possibility to another artist to make something incredible, I mean, that's a privilege to me. You know, that's super exciting. So,
Yeah. If you want access to this motion capture library, you should email studio@ior50.com.
Yeah.
Or go on ior50.com. Yeah, so how was the process of making the actual room? What of the library did you use, and how did you kind of how was that progression?
So there were always like technical challenges involved in creating real-time art. And like, as much as we want to fully express the vastness of queer, it can be quite challenging as a visual artist to fit that into the idea. And so in my dreams, I would love to make like an infinite distortion of the entire archive. You know, never the same one experience, always modifying, changing. These are dreams, you know, there are always obviously limitations. And then I found myself, okay, I have like a fixed amount of time. I can, with a certain amount of megabytes, I can fit this content into. So I tried to find a diverse section where I could like modify and distort specific data and use that to the best of my ability, whilst also exaggerating the distortions layer by layer around the dancer, so that we could create some sense of like a space that envelops the dancer, that enhances and exaggerates their being.
But what I really like about it is how many different parts are moving differently in the space, and that sort of matches with Betty Apple's sound really well because it's so layered in visuals as well as sound. And it sort of captures like that queer dance floor in that, you know, everything is different and so different from each other, and yet it's this like conglomerate like mood and enveloping vibe that Venus and Foyle is sort of theorizing in their paper. You know, this sense of like everyone coming together, like every different element sort of coming together for this shared queered experience. And what's so beautiful about it is it's literally different people, like the motion capture of different people.
Yeah, yeah. I think I recorded about 25 people in total. I wish I could keep going, but that's the thing. I still can. You know, I hope that this can be like a lifelong project, this archive that I can keep adding to as queer keeps developing as a theory. The motion archive hopefully will also develop.
Yeah, I am excited for that future. Yeah, what's so beautiful about this space in general is this sampling of different queer people in our lives, you know, our four people's lives. We took the motion movements of our friends, our queer friends, and we also took the voices and breath of our queer friends. At the start of this project, we were all sort of brainstorming, you know, how do we both communicate queerness, the inherent queerness of queerness, and also the collective queerness. And so we decided to collect the breath and voice of our queer community and started putting out calls for people to just send us audio recordings of their breath, panting or just breathing, and also had them read different sections of Venus and Foyle's essay. And that was all in random and chaotic chunks sent to Betty Apple to weave together so masterfully. Hi, Betty.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah,
Thank you,
well,
Sam. Woo!
yeah, thank you, Sam. Thank you, all of the people who sent in your breath and voice. We see you, we hear you. Yeah, how was dealing with all of those samples and all of that content? What was the kind of approach you went for at the beginning, and how did that change throughout?
Because I like who did not define themselves as queer, and you know, nowadays like we use this kind of technology to communicate, and sometimes I think with the sound of breathe is nowadays we are talking about, you know, after COVID, especially after COVID-19, we all be black out, we can block out. Anyway, so
Block out, yeah.
yeah, so I was thinking if people can recording themselves to kiss the cell phone, and we are not allowed to kiss each other, you know, right now, but can kiss the cell phone. So if I put them all together, it will sound like the atmosphere from the touch, you know, because we can only see the virtual and sound, and the video, the visual is already provide the feeling from the space. So I was thinking the smell is come from the sound from touch. So maybe when you hear something about like a kiss or, you know, talk, sometimes you might think of when you clubbing in, you know, like in a dark room, and you sometimes will hear people or something. So that's some beautiful moment when I have, especially in the club, nice rave. Not every club make you feel happy, but I want to recreate that kind of you know, sound from atmosphere. And sometimes it's a little squeezy, it's not that much listening, and or you might be in your own zone, but that kind of thing can make me feel quite queer, like nothing is only this, it's fluid, liquid, and you are in the whole space, but you feel everyone. And yeah, that's what I want to recreate from the asset, you know, like like make me feel like I was in the club and I hear everyone their mind speaking. It's kind of like
reading everyone's mind.
Yeah, a little bit psychedelic feeling. It's I want to create some kind of psychedelic when I was, or when people was in this queer club, or like you know, like the new idea of my club. So a little bit like a trip, maybe from the sound. It's not only for the dance, but from the feeling when we have in, or when I have in the club feeling. Sometimes you didn't hear, you know, all the music. Sometimes you just in your own zone think about something, and with the music, and then coming and and yourself and some people voice. I'm sorry that I didn't provide too many language, because I speak in Chinese and my friend or your friend speak in English. But what if next time people send me more language, that would be more awesome. Which mean I know voice sometimes in the text, like we want to know what it mean, right? But if we are all in the club, sometimes you hear many different language. You are not that really know what everyone say, but you kind of suddenly feel the feeling. So that's my music, the track, the soundscape want to recreate the feeling. Like maybe sometimes, you know, maybe you hear the sound, or if you know the language, maybe you understand, but you don't need to understand the whole things, because I use the tone, the tone and the change. Also we have the visual, so that's the thing, about the feeling. And then you maybe can feel the queer things. It's not that clear, but
I feel like the incoherent quality of the sound really speaks to the nature of queerness at large, and that's really beautiful.
I also wanted to say I agree with the incoherence part. You know, that was part of why I added some text in there that was like illegible, and I wanted to highlight that sensation that you gave, Betty, because I felt it very strong, and I agree with you in this part.
Yeah, I also feel the vibe of the space is I feel the strong the queer idea, because usually people will, you know, now like we kind of to represent the feeling from what is queer mean, and with all this kind of thing. So that's perfect.
I really love what you said about like people hearing the sound on the outside, but this track is sort of almost like hearing people's thoughts on the inside as well, and that sort of brings about this inside outside feel that me and Emily were really going for, sort of sourcing from your theory about like sublimation.
We're not as, you know, we're not effectively bound. And that's kind of what the idea of like moving beyond yourself is that your feelings aren't necessarily bound to your own body, you know, and in a space like the rave space, these feelings are actually often shared and spread amongst people. And so we do quite literally like feel the atmosphere of a space. And that may even enhance or exacerbate or change some of the initial feelings that we brought with us. And that's why I think these sort of more communal experiences, aesthetic experiences, like what you can find on a dance floor, are really profound because of that shared affect, and that our subjectivities become like maybe less bound than we imagine them to be.
Betty, how did you know you were done? What was sort of like the point where you were like, okay, this is giving me the feeling I want?
I don't know, just feel like yeah, it's sometimes it's hard if I design for some. Oh, I have to say this time this collaboration is interesting because this is my first time to feel like because me and Sam like we kind of working, and then he worked that and I kind of imagination, but he didn't give me like I need to do, because usually when you do sound, you are like a next level after the visual, but this time I feel like we are equal. It's also really beautiful. It's feel like a queer things, you know, like we are not like who is the best or who is the best. I feel it's a little bit balanced and not
Yeah.
like yeah. So that's the new experience, and also because of this and make me can have more comfortable confidence to work like this, because this subject is I feel inside my mind like I, you know, like I've naturally feel that. So if you guys didn't say, Betty, can you like don't put this, don't put that or something, you know, like some director, so then I can naturally to do what I feel, and it's done quickly and it's perfect. Like myself, when I finished that, I was like, wow, I feel I'm kind of like a genius, like but
Yes, you are.
I mean that is good when you are artist, when you are not stuck in something like, oh shit, I cannot figure it out, I don't have feeling. I like the feeling like, wow, why is suddenly and it coming, and that is the perfect, like you can let it go and then you kind of shape it, and then you excited people to hear, and you are not afraid if someone don't understand, but you will like me, I will be really happy if someone watch, listen, and they feel something and they tell me, and I will say, oh yeah, you know, you get me. And this,
You're a
yeah,
genius
so
too.
yeah. No, I mean this is the connection from queer art. It's
Yeah.
really important because that's why I want to support this. Also, because before work with CTM and I saw IORS studio, I get that. And when I do the party at CTM the first time before, I was so scared or like so nervous. And after that, I feel, wow, so this is real queer things. You know, I don't know why, like suddenly I saw everyone face how they enjoy the music, and it's not like you know, some audience they will look like, okay, I need to give you some challenge or something. Like you feel share, and everyone want to know what you want to give them, and the artist, or like it's like a salon from the creator and the one who feel the queer things. It's not judgment place. So this kind of artwork, I think it's really important in nowadays, and that's the thing why I feel so playful. It's playful. So
Yeah.
I really support, and also I hope this work can go on this way, because as we all know, in new media art, sometimes the way it's look really patriarchy, you know, elegant and correct. It's look nice,
Correct. Yeah.
but sometimes you feel it's like a merchandise. But the thing I want to create is after 100 years, after all the technology is level up, but they can still feel me. I don't want like okay, after that your technology is not the point, you know. So that's the thing why I want to do this, because this is the thing I know how to do, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I mean, I really love hearing that because I think in the same way queerness informed the sort of shared disruption of flesh and oneness on the dance floor, I think it also informed our process for this room. You know, there was a very like flat way of discussing things, and we were asking for feedback from, you know, different disciplines and just like forming this together in
Yeah.
a very queer way. And I think that feeling of a safe space to explore art and also explore movement on the dance floor is
Yeah.
related, you know, like when we are in this like queer collaborative situation, you know, it allows us to be more unhinged with the music, be more unhinged with the visuals. And that really came through with your sound. It sounds unhinged and crazy. And my dad was like, "This is scary."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's good, like when people feel scary because they never experienced that.
Yeah, it's just
So
strange for
yeah,
them.
it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations, everyone.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time and your work. I mean,
And thank you so much for anyone who donate their voice, especially my friend Angie and Julia, also Peter who do the master for this piece, make this more complete. And thank you so much for all the people who helped me.
I'm so proud of us. This is just such a cool room and such a cool experience. And I'm glad it's archived in this queer package. So thank you so much for existing, guys. Yeah, is there anything you guys want to plug, Sam?
No, I'm good.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
happy.
Well, Sam, IOR50.com, Sam Aldridge on Instagram. Also, co-founder with Juicy Amoroso, who's also amazing, amazing. Betty, do you want to plug anything?
No? Yeah,
Okay.
I want everyone experience.
Yeah.
Okay,
Come
well,
see the
come see the show, hit up all of us and tell us what you thought about the show, because that is what we're here for. And Emily, you want to plug anything? Okay, everyone doesn't want to plug. I'll plug. Check out Soak on Instagram. Check out Venus in Foil. Check out Soft Matter. They're the co-founders of
Soak.
And yeah, come to the show. RSVP to the next day, last day. Yeah, Emily and I are gonna have a Q&A now. But thank you so much, Sam and Betty.
Okay.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you
Bye
in
bye.
your city. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.
If you saw anything that resonated with you, please donate to our cause. Help us reach the canon. Nourish experimental arts. Did anything resonate with your body? If anything touched you, please donate to our cause. Help us reach the canon. Nourish experimental arts.
Griffin just asked, it would be interesting to hear an elaboration on the definition of queer affect. What exactly is meant by this term?
Yeah, so it's definitely like a tricky to nail down like a precise definition, which is something I've always been struggling with because this is a concept that I use a lot in my own work. And I believe the term was put, if I'm correct, I believe the term was put forth by Dina Georges, who I mentioned in the recording. And so in academia, the word like affect is often used, but what that really means is feeling. But affects are sort of feelings that can't really be named. Like when you think of a feeling, you often have terms like, like sadness or happiness or things like this. Affect is sort of this deeper sort of base level of feeling that's kind of like undirected and difficult to capture with language. And then the term queer affects is sort of this idea that captures, again, the strange and unnameable feelings that often arise through trauma and like the recurrence of trauma and the ways that traumatic feelings sort of like bubble up and resurface. And in this way, queer is not so much used in the sense of like LGBTQ, but more in the sense of a disruption, like queer as a disruption, because these feelings sort of take us by surprise and like disrupt our sort of like normative thought processes and ways of being. So you can think of it more as like a disruption in feeling, like the surprising emergence of like strange, tense, often like very difficult and uncomfortable feelings. And yeah, the way that was described that best clarified it for me was like when you're looking at like a piece of art, for example, and you feel this like strange like tension or like embrace like bubble like you feel like you're being embraced by the work of art, and this like strange tension like emerges in you that you don't really have a means to describe.
Yeah. Is there a connection to the uncanny in that sense?
Do you mean like the uncanny in the sense of like, when you look at something feels strangely familiar but not quite right? I mean, I haven't read a lot about the uncanny, so I'm not sure if there's a relationship that's been explored in the literature. I think it was more so just a phrase like that uncanny in the sense of like a familiar but like uncertain sort of feeling. So I can't comment specifically on its relationship to the uncanny, like as a theoretical idea.
Yeah, I think the affect naming the unnameable, that kind of comes down to like so many things that we don't have vocabulary for, just like the way people move, like the tone of their voice, even the language they use and the emotions charged with like certain words that are exchanged in those environments, like lingo and stuff, like all of that I think is just part of the idiosyncrasies that can make up queer affect.
So a question about the sorry, I like don't have my glasses on.
Oh, I will say, Emily, can you talk a bit more about the autoethnographical process in writing your paper and working in different media like sound in this collaboration?
Yeah, so in terms of the autoethnographic approach, I was writing this paper at a time when clubs were closed, so I couldn't really go out and do like an ethnographic approach. So I was kind of relying on my own experiences and my own memories to inform, to inform the paper. And because really it was when I was reading these theories and started thinking about my own experiences on the dance floor, and many of those experiences were shared and I talked about them with other people, but at the end of the day, it's like I know best what my own encounters were. Like that's what I can speak to with more certainty, whereas I can only kind of like grasp at or make guesses at what others might be experiencing internally, right? And then again, it was often through conversations with my brother and how we both kind of find that these really intense moments on the dance floor kind of have a bit of a surreal quality that becomes really hard to describe. That's where I kind of was inspired to try to write in a way that was more surreal at times. So blending like sections that are, more serious, like theoretical analysis and like literature review, with then these sort of like excerpts of like kind of like surrealist descriptions of particular moments or memories in the club. Yeah.
And what were some of the excerpts that you chose from? Who wrote those, and what are the works?
You're talking to me?
Yeah, I'm talking to you. Like what pieces of writing did you take samples from?
Okay, so I mean, like in a typical paper, like you draw on all kinds of literature and kind of put it together in a way that makes sense or that helps to explore your perspective. So I drew heavily on my supervisor Hannah Dyer's work on aesthetics, and I drew pretty heavily on the work of Teresa Brennan, who writes about the transmission of affect and how affect can be shared. Dina Georges, obviously, who I've already mentioned, and her work on queer affect. I drew a lot on Ashton Crawley's recent work, The Lonely Letters, which was sort of, the style was described as like a mythopoetics of loneliness. And that kind of really inspired me to be like, okay, like I can explore things in a way that is almost a little bit like stream of consciousness sounding at times, or that's like a little bit that dips into fantasy. So yeah, like, I'd say those are some of like the primary works that I was drawing on, as well as Jose Munoz and the idea of queer futurity, although it ended up factoring less into this particular paper than it will into future papers.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, but in terms of working with the media and sound, I mean, for me, like so many of these experiences are characterized by like the sonic, and it's like the sonic really seems to have this power to like articulate or like shake loose some of those feelings that are kind of stuck really deep within us. At least that's been my experience, and the experience of many others that I've talked to, and perhaps is why we like, seek out these kinds of sonic experiences. They obviously are doing something for us. And when writing the paper, I was thinking a lot about my time in Berghain and how heavy and like abrasive the sound can be there, but also so repetitive. And like that was where I really felt like these like dark feelings, or like this like grief and this like this residue of trauma sort of like being drawn to the surface. Where in other settings where the tone of the sound is more like hopeful and positive, I've felt again more like that like hopeful like look towards the future. So I think that often that also plays a role, right? Like the sonic qualities of a space.
Mm-hmm. Elle sort of just said something that we touched on, but they said would love to hear more about how you took a creative writing approach into an academic piece of writing. I think the shared experience of queer affect and that trauma. I think with that shared experience of queer affect and trauma comes healing. No,
yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
I think I mean that's like a large part of my paper, but I don't think I talk about healing in like a traditional sense. Like there's sort of this narrative that to heal is to like to move on from something and to like let it go. And I don't like sort of like, I guess I don't think that really is what happens with trauma. Like it stays with you in these strange ways. And I forget which theorist it was that said this. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't remember, but I was reading the work of one theorist. I think it might have been Anne Svetkovich, who said something about trauma being like the way to heal is to actually just make a different relationship to what's lost, not necessarily move on from what's lost. And I think that's kind of what you're doing in that dance, where you're making a different relationship to what has been lost. And that's really beautiful. But yeah, in terms of the creative writing, I think I already touched on that a little bit. I mean, it was really just like I was saying, I have a hard time thinking through these experiences literally. And I think it kind of loses that like special quality to like write about them in this like very intense like summary form. Like, and then the lights were flashing and the smoke was, emerging from the DJ with like something like this feels too straightforward.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to
and explain, I don't think this can really be captured this way. And then I started reading some other works, like I said, Ashton Crawley, and saying, okay, like this kind of fantastical exploration can be possible alongside, you know, a more analytic and like theoretical approach. And I just kind of put them together.
Yeah, and I think on like the topic of forming a different relationship with that trauma or with that grief, it like by virtue of being in a space where everyone got there via being queer and therefore via having the lived experience of being queer, like you are automatically building a different relationship with it. It is inherently relational inside that dance floor, on that dance floor.
Yeah, exactly.
Betty, yeah, do you want to add on to the topic of, you know, sonic stuff? You are the sound guy.
I just want to say, I really love these spaces. It's never happened in my MA, MFA. It's amazing. Like in Taiwan, you cannot use this kind of idea to become a thesis. So it's beautiful things, but I cannot, myself, I'm not research based. I'm not activism. I'm artist. So let's see what artists mean. Artist is artist. Artist same as rocker or something. Like they will do something they think like this. So that's me. So that's how I feel from this thesis. So I put it in my material, but with the audience and the authors should apply me to do that.
I think
and yeah. I mean, yeah. So I just want to claim that this is the most beautiful thing in art. Like we don't do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We do 1, the, and then we take this, we take that, and then we combine this, and the sound is so weird. And if myself I make sound, I never do that. So that's why I feel so happy, because I feel the queer things like that. It's not like a statement, like you have a national things. Yeah, we are queer world. No, that's the things what I feel like. I don't know what is that, and then I create that. So I recreated to make it as a queer understand. It's not her queer. It's myself, and it's not yours. I mean, queer shouldn't to acknowledge, like
it shouldn't belong to people.
Yeah.
Well, that's
we shouldn't belong to everyone. I mean, we
feeling.
are but we can support everyone. That's all. That's my feeling. So yeah. Thank you very much. I drunk again.
No, I think it's really
I use my suck English to explain my very good statement again. I still have to say this is the best theory I ever see. It's beautiful. Yeah, thank you.
Well, what I think was so like interesting about this process though is like, again, like, and I think Elle like kind of pointed it out, like how they're all kind of like responses to each other. Like when you read these like small excerpts, and like we all chatted about sort of like the feeling, right? Just like the core feeling of like the rave space. And then somehow you take all these pieces together and you create this like beautiful sonic representation of your own feelings and your own like interpretations. But it's like when you listen to it, somehow like still it matches like exactly like the kind of feeling like I was thinking of. And I think that draws attention to what I was like saying before, there's kind of this like feeling that we can recognize in one another, and it doesn't always have words. It's like kind of goes like beyond language, you know. And And I think it's just so beautiful that all of it kind of interacted together. And even like the movement of like the figures created by IOR50, right? Like have this kind of like bizarre and like strange way of moving, but it's an amalgamation of all these different like queer people. So yeah,
Yeah, I love that.
Responses to one another.
I love that, you know, out of these ingredients, like Sam did an amazing job and like took your elements, Betty, your sound elements and the theory elements and put it, you know, into that visual thing. And that was a extension of his queer affect, and our queer affect or no, but or queer, I don't know, queer affect.
And since everyone's like very written into the room, like on a personal level, right? Like my writing and like the words that I wrote are like personal reflections of my own feeling. And then like Betty's like soundscape and that creation is like a personal reflection of like, you know, your feeling. And then like this movement creation is like this Sam's like personal, you know, feelings and Betty, and you can see that in the way that like he talks about the work, for example.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I just feel like everyone is sort of like personally, you know, everyone's feelings are like personally like kind of like written into the room a little bit, if that makes sense. Yeah, like little pieces of everyone in there.
Yeah, I like that. It's the creature of human can do right now, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
we definitely
yeah.
Frankenstein that.
Thank you to let me talk. But yeah, if anyone want to talk inside in this room, that would be awesome. Or
Yeah,
maybe
anyone?
Yeah, open it up if anyone.
You can ask
Hi,
everyone
all.
just come inside with
Yes,
your
hello. I'm Elle. I've been making questions. I'll show my face briefly also. Hello. Yes,
how to make her inside.
I'm doing it.
Hey.
Hello.
Yeah, that would be fun. Hi.
Yes, hello everyone. I've been asking questions in the chat. My name is Elle, they, them pronouns. But yeah, I've been really sitting here enjoying the way you all even respond to each other now, because it doesn't seem like this is a kind of art project, or not art project, but art exhibit that doesn't necessarily even really end. You know, this is where the beginning of like all of your works get to like show themselves in the way that you've all been manifesting over the, I'm guessing the past couple of months that you've been creating this. And to tie back into something that Betty was saying, it really is beautiful, to use the keyword of the day, how all of your different experiences, because Betty was saying you all have different relationships to the word queer, all different relationships to yourself and how you exist in the world, but how closely tied they all are to each other, how you're all able to create one moving art piece that sort of encapsulates all of your personal feelings into like one, for lack of a better word, affect, one feeling that can be universally shared almost. So yeah, I think that was incredible that you were all able to do that. And it all still feels very personal to each of you differently, if that makes sense. So yeah.
That's what I was trying to say, put more succinctly. Yeah.
Great. You guys did a beautiful, beautiful thing. So yeah, I've been loving this panel. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you, Elle. Yeah, Elle is a writer for, are you an indie writer or?
I work for Trash Mag. We're a DIY local magazine based out of LA. We just got a bunch of writers on, so we're all starting with our pitches in the next few weeks. This being a collaboration with me and Jelly, who I believe you know.
Met them at the rave.
Yes, exactly. So it all comes full circle.
Yes. Yeah, well, yeah, keep an eye out for that Trash Mag article. It's gonna be cool.
Yes, I will hopefully be following you all and posting about it. So hopefully you'll all get to read it. And yes.
Yeah. Does anybody else have anything?
I guess.
Well, we can do this again. You can do something similar by asking us questions on the Discord. I'll link our Discord. I am always there. Like, I'm always there. So if you think of any questions, or you want to link up with anyone, or you want to collab, hit us up. We would love to.
We would love to, for sure. Okay.
All right. Okay. Yeah. That's it. Thank you guys for coming. This has been a wonderful couple of hours. Please go see Bodies Unhinge and the opening tomorrow.
Okay. Good night.
Bye.
Here, good night.